The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
The calendar has turned to December, so that means it's time to crown a Big 12 champion. The Big 12 football season, regular season, is in the books. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you here on First and 12, and we are going to unpack everything that took place in the final week of Big 12 football, and it was an eventful one, as it always is, in the Big 12, and we'll be with you over the next 2 hours here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone. Alex, it's the League of Chaos, and, we didn't have as much chaos this weekend, but no shortage of storylines, of course.
Oh, to me, it's just been an entire season of chaos, really. I mean, we were trying to figure out some of these storylines for, our headlines today and all that, and you go, oh, my goodness, 14 weeks ago, where this season started off and where we had this whole thing and how dead wrong we were about the best teams and how dead wrong we were about the worst teams in this conference, and just the shock of both sides of this thing, and then the very soft, squishy middle of mediocrity of this conference as well. There's a lot to unpack on this day here, so let's jump in first with our breakdown of this BYU versus Houston game that went off last night in Provo, and another late one, another cold one. Let's kick it off right here with our BYU game breakdown.
The BYU Breakdown.
BYU takes down Houston 30-18, and it was not a pretty game. BYU did everything in their power to honestly give Houston a chance to win this football game. Around the second quarter, Iowa State not officially punched their ticket, but they eliminated BYU officially from the Big 12 championship game. And when BYU hit the halftime locker room, that clearly had an impact on this BYU team because, Alex, in the second half, when BYU was up 21-10 at the halftime break, you thought, okay, they're going to come out, they're going to just pull away from Houston. But this was a game that was 24-18. And BYU was on the ropes. They went 3 and out, and then Houston had possession, and then the tide turned as BYU forced the fumble. Jack Kelly was brilliant, and then BYU took over in the red zone on Houston's 18-yard line. But, it's kind of a strange game. And Kalani Sitake shared similar sentiments coming out of that victory. But it's kind of, how do you really feel if you're a Cougar fan on this Sunday morning? How do you feel about this game? Because yes, it's great you got to win. Yes, it's great you got to 10th victory of the season. But at the same time, you didn't get to the Big 12 championship game, and that's kind of a tough pill to swallow.
Well, and on top of it, I mean, I had a couple of friends of mine who are down there in Provo and very deep within that BYU program, and it was like, well, do you really feel like that BYU deserved to be in the Big 12 championship game just based off of the last 3 or 4 weeks? Not just the 2 losses, but really how things felt even in last night's game. I mean, 7 turnovers between the 2 teams, and Houston is expected to be pretty sloppy. But I will give credit to Willie Fritz and his guys. They showed up fired up. They had it going. They had the energy there. The chippiness was not lacking at all. If you would have had on paper, oh no, the teams that are going to fight the most in this game, it's going to be Arizona State and BYU, getting chippy in the pregame before that one, and then the next week you're going to have Darius Lassiter thrown out of the game for throwing punches. I mean, it's wild, but yeah, I mean, it was a sloppy game. It was clunky. When you have 7 turnovers like that and when you have muff punts after the defense does well. But you had some bright, shining moments from your seniors. Guys like Jack Kelly, as you already mentioned. I mean, he is just phenomenal. He caused that late fumble that ended up – it looked so weird, too, on TV. It was just getting bobbled around, getting kicked around, and it looked weird. It looked like Chris, the quarterback for Houston. It was just like – it was almost like he laid down and was just like – I'm giving up my life on this down. I'm just going to lay down here, and you guys can have the football. But, BYU had 190 yards on the ground. Jake Retzlaff was just good enough, right? 8 for 17, I think, on the night. Not a great night at all for him, but 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I guess the no interceptions but he had a lot of missed throws too, didn't he? And he had a lot of missed guys, and you had drop balls from guys. So I think the cold weather had something to do with that, but what are you going to do? You make excuses. I mean, BYU plays in the cold. They live in Provo. So all the things that added up. I mean, we're complaining about this, about how messy that game was last night for BYU. They end the season, Mitch, at 10-2. Just a wild prospect considering where we had this team 14 weeks ago.
Well, and that's a great point because getting to 10 wins is an accomplishment. And any power conference, including the Big 12, and I know Nick Saban out there can say, oh, if Ole Miss was in this league, they'd probably just, what would their record be? It'd just be undefeated. Well, this is a good football league, and to go 10-2 out of this is an accomplishment. And BYU accomplished something pretty special in that sense. But there is that kind of bitter taste of not reaching the top because, how this season started and to finish it the way they did and to play the way they did last night, that stadium was dead. 59,000 plus were in attendance at LaVell Edwards Stadium. They didn't have much to cheer about. BYU was sloppy in the red zone. They had to settle for a field goal. It was a slippery, hard surface. You saw Keelan Marion on a jet sweep slip on that third down. The turnovers you noted, Alex. And, I pointed out to you and JJ on your show on the KSL Sports Zone every day on 3 to 6 on the zone. But, Jake Retzloff, I felt like needed to close out the season with some style, with an impressive statement that I am your quarterback in 2025. And to go 8 of 19, 167, I feel like it leaves a little bit of an opening for Aaron Roderick and Kalani Sitake to say, you know what, has Jake hit his ceiling, and do we need to get another quarterback in here to push him again in 2025 or maybe get someone to unseat him next year? Because, Jake did a nice job running the football. He had 2 touchdowns on the ground. But, aside of throwing the football, it was a struggle. Now, it was interesting in the first quarter, after the first possession of the game, he goes out after that crazy fumble to open the game between Keelan Marion and L.J. Martin.
Yeah.
Jake Retzloff attempts a tackle. It was a touchdown-saving tackle on a big man for Houston. And then Jake goes instantly to the medical tent, and it looked like trainers were examining kind of his hand. And then after the second offensive series, he was there, but he goes back to the medical tent, and you kind of wonder if that was an issue for him throughout the evening. Again, Kalani, as he always does after a game, kind of downplayed the significance, but still, I think that kind of played a little bit of a role. Jake's clearly beaten up, and the stats kind of bore that out.
Let me ask you. Let me throw this at you. I had a thought during the post game last night where I was like, you know what? I bet you're going to see teams who may approach Jake Retzlaff in the offseason, and they might be tempting for him to be elsewhere from a money standpoint. I think a lot of teams see a guy like that and they go, hey, he wins a lot of games, and he's got a little bit of moxie to him. And we've seen guys who have gone to big teams for a lot less, right? Like, I mean, look, this is an example, and I've been harping this all year, so I kind of feel vindicated a little bit after yesterday, or validated in my thought. But Will Howard, he left Kansas State last year. Neither you nor I were like, oh, that guy is killer. You got to pick that guy up. Ohio State signs him up, and he looked like he single-handedly handed the game away yesterday between Ohio State and Michigan. So guys hit the transfer portal. I'm fascinated to see what BYU, who's a program who has their stuff together, who has, mommy and daddy are still together, right? I mean, this is a whole home right here. And you have people who are going to take care of you. You have a lot of stuff going on. This program's got a lot going for you. There's some talent that's going to come back. And yet you're going to see tumult in the transfer portal, and you don't know what some of these guys' personalities are going to take them elsewhere. Kalani, of course, is going to do what a lot of coaches do, which is you got to recruit the guys that you want to keep in your locker room. I would be interested to see if Jake Retzlaff actually might find a little bit of flirtations outside of the quarterback room in Provo. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but I mean, look, if somebody comes and tempts you, and if the money's good enough, and we've seen money be wild in some of these other places. Maybe he gets pulled away somewhere else. I mean, I could really see that.
No question. I mean, I think anything's possible with the portal and with NIL and, revenue share. And, that's going to be a fascinating piece to, roster construction next year. You're going to go to a 105-man roster. And, how committed is BYU to getting near that $22, $23 million threshold in revenue share?
Nobody knows what the 105 roster is even going to do. Nobody knows how that's going to treat across the entirety of college football. So how do you stay ahead of something that nobody knows how it's going to actually go?
And I think that all these players, they have every option on the table. It's funny how last night was senior day, and you saw guys like Chase Roberts. And really, honestly, you could pull out the whole roster and honor them in senior day because, honestly, all of them could leave. It's just that's how college football is. It's a very transactional-based sport now where it's not – you can't just assume, Isaiah Glasgow was an absolute stud last night. But, it's nice to think that he's probably going to be the face of your defense next year. But what if he, gets a – wandering eye, because I'm telling you, if that guy hit the portal, he's probably got 30 Power 4 conference teams ready to offer him because he's been outstanding in his combination of size and speed. He's a freak. And so BYU's got to be aggressive in roster retention, but it is interesting with Jake because you saw kind of the full spectrum of Retzlaff this season, man, because you think of those big arm throws that he showed at Baylor and against Southern Illinois. That's like the product of working with John Beck and all that extra work that he put in the offseason. But then there's the side of Jake where he's still making the disastrous throws.
Of misses.
He's still making he's still got a lot of misses. The accuracy was an issue. Last night you saw that deep ball to Darius Laster, sailed over him. He was wide open. You got to hit that. You got to make that in stride. So, it's a mixed bag. And I think, again, Jake left a little bit of an opening potentially to where BYU's got to have that conversation and maybe be looking in that market and saying, can we upgrade this position? Because right now, unless they believe McKay Hillstead is the guy of the future, and I still jury's to be out on that because in fall camp, he was very green. And I like his arm. McKay Hillstead's got a huge arm. But to say that he could be the guy that unseats Jake maybe in 2025, I don't know about that yet. Way before the season, I thought maybe there's a chance because BYU was such a dire situation, it felt like, at quarterback. But at this point, from what we know right now, with Jake having a 10-2 season, that'd be tough to say. But so this next month's going to be really important. I think this bowl prep and how they approach it, and you're probably going to get a good opponent in the bowl game, whoever you face is a power conference team. So got to make the most of your opportunity and really get better from this.
Let's take our first break. We'll come back, and we will have our sound from Kyle Whittingham, who ended the season with a win for the Utes. And we'll listen to what the coach said. Obviously, lots of questions going into this offseason for Coach Whittingham and what he's going to have to do from a personal standpoint. Is he going to stay that head coach at the University of Utah? He says it's going to be based off of what's best for the program and not what's best for him. We'll come back, listen to his post-game comments after that UCF win on Friday. Stay right here. It is it's First and 12. It's right here on KSL News Radio and on the KSL Sports Zone. It's all brought to you by Macy's. We appreciate their support throughout the season, the freshest fruits and vegetables, and your favorite local farms and brands. Macy's, happy shopping. We'll come back. More to go. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone and KSL News Radio.
Today's just the start of the Big 12 and Power 5 talk to come. Listen to JJ and Alex Monday on your drive home. Afternoons from 3 to 6 on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about on JJ and Alex all week this week, and, of course, breaking it down for you, Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry right here on First and 12. Mitch, of course, is our BYU insider for KSLSports.com, host on Cougar Sports Saturday on KSL News Radio and Cougar Nation. What a season for BYU. They get the win last night over Houston and go to 10-2 on the season. On the flip side, you have Utah, who locked out their year with a win. Thank goodness for Utah fans, because they did not want to have that other side of history of never in the history of their program having an 8-game losing streak in one season. They got to 7, of course, and then they ended up beating UCF. On a messy night in Orlando, here was Coach Kyle Whittingham after the 28-14 win over the Knights of UCF.
We roll. Okay. Boy, that was good to be able to send our seniors out their last game with a win. Just great effort on defense. That was the number one offense in the Big 12 statistically coming in, and defensive guys did a great job. Scored twice on defense. Held them to way less than what they've been averaging, and so very pleased with that. Offense, just enough. Did just enough to win the game. I don't believe we turned the ball over. So that's a big positive offensively, not turning the ball over. Didn't have real gaudy numbers on offense, to say the least, but again, didn't put the defense in any bad situations. And so that was the formula is, play great defense and take care of the ball offensively, and that's what we did. Some real positives. Kai Bernard goes over 1,000 yards with his production tonight. It was great to see Zacharias Williams, a true freshman, do some really good things. I think he's going to be a really good player. Caught a bunch of balls, I think 5 or 6 balls, leading receiver for us. He's a tough kid, got good size, good speed. Good to see, like I said, the defense perform as a whole, and 2 pick sixes in one game. That's 3 pick sixes in the last 3 games, I guess it would be. So that's a big plus for us. Field goal kickers did a nice job. We lost Cole Becker in the first half. He had an injury that prevented him from kicking the rest of the way. So our true freshman, Coleman, who has been kicking off most of the year, came in and seemed very comfortable kicking field goals and kicking the ball. So yeah, really good positive way to end the season. Had a lot of adversity this year that we faced, but these guys just kept hanging in there. Like I said, all the last 2 months, they no drop off in their work ethic, no drop off in their focus, their concentration, how they approach their business. Pleasure to coach, even though we far from where we wanted to be and different season than what we had hoped for. Still can't say how much I think of these seniors and this team as a whole. So very positive. Questions?
So it seemed like Zamaya's pick six kind of jump-started things and got things going. Obviously the defense in general did, but what was there anything about that maybe changed the emotions of the game or anything to help you?
Well, pick six is always an igniter for a lot of emotion, and particularly on your defensive side of the ball. And that was a great pick and an exceptional run by him. And you saw how fast he is, and a great job by the defense executing the interception return process that we drill every single week. So yeah, it definitely gave us a spark and really a shot of adrenaline for us.
Kyle, how do you approach the next week or so, given your impending decision?
I don't want to talk about that. That's not about me. I don't want to even bring that up. Let these guys enjoy this win. It's all about our players tonight, and just proud of them. And I'd rather just leave it at that for tonight.
Coach, you guys had 2 pick sixes and a fumble that turned into 3 points. What were you guys seeing from UC's offense that allowed the defense to capitalize?
Well, we just Coach Scally does a great job every week with his preparation and his film study, and nobody prepares any better for a game than Morgan Scally, but then it doesn't matter what the coach knows; it matters what the players know. So he does a great job of conveying information and knowledge to his players and tips and tendencies for the week, and that really was a product of that. Just knowing what was coming before it was coming because of film study and really good coaching. And his whole staff, the whole staff does a good job.
Sorry. Obviously, you wanted to have better success this year, but how important is it to get the win to propel you into next year? I know it changes, obviously, transfer portal and all that stuff, but how important is that?
Yeah, it's a positive. I mean, you certainly want to go out with a win rather than the alternative, but it does give you some momentum going into the off season, positive feeling, but still, far away from where we wanted to be, and a lot of circumstances this year contributed to that, but very positive and proud of our guys, and mainly for hanging in there, because you start having week after week of no success. A lot of teams are just cashing in and just not even give any effort. These guys just continue to give great effort every single week.
Kai Bernard gets over 1,000 yards on the season. What has he meant to this program?
He's been huge this year. He's been the vast bulk and majority of our rush game this year. He's by far got the most carries and the most production, and talk about a guy who maybe thought he was done playing football last year to what he accomplished this year is pretty impressive, and we're elated that obviously he was on our team this year and came back for this last year.
mentioned it wasn't the most offensively gaudy stats, but what did you see from the offense to be able to kind of keep you guys in the game?
Yeah, well, they didn't turn it over. Like I said, they kept control of the football and took care of the football. Didn't put our defense in any bad field situations. You know, we didn't make a whole bunch of first downs either, but enough to move the chains and flip the field and give the defense some room to operate.
Coach, speak about UCF running back R.J. Harper, one of the rusher in the nation, and he broke the touchdown record for UCF tonight. Terrific
player. My thought is he'll be playing at the next level for a lot of years. He's a really good player. He's tough. He's fast. He's got great contact balance, vision, and obviously the production speaks for itself. The number one touchdown getter in the history of the school. So, very impressed with that young man.
Each game, you've said that this team hasn't given up on fight, and after this game, you said you guys earned this win. How special was it to see, I guess, them come out with this win, given that, you know, so many games have been so close. There's been controversies in multiple games. Yeah. I mean, walk me through your emotions.
Well, it's very rewarding to see him have a chance to have some positive fruits from their labors. You know, they've been working hard week after week and not much to show for it, and, you know, nothing to show for it in terms of W's for 7 weeks in a row. And so, for them to show the character and the resiliency and the ability to handle adversity and come back and for one more time together and put together a game like that was very positive for us, for them. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Kyle.
That was head coach Kyle Whittingham after Utah took down UCF on Black Friday in Orlando. Big win, I think, for Utah, just to get a little bit of momentum going into the offseason. And now the questions are going to swirl. I mean, where do they go with the offensive coordinator? What happens with Kyle Whittingham? So many questions, and he downplayed, right, as you heard, the future talk. He made it about the players, but at the same time, Whit, a lot of people want to know, like, what are you going to do, man? And because, signing day is coming up on Wednesday, and you wonder after signing day is when we start to get maybe some clarity on Whittingham and his future. Lock in the class, because that's what it seems to always kind of be, where you get a signing class locked in, and then coaches then maybe make their decisions. Unless you're Gus Malzahn, you say, you know what, I'm out of here. I'm going to go OC at Florida State. I'm dipping, guys. Have a nice night. Oh, quarterbacks are transferring moments after we end the game. Okay, well, I'm going to transfer to a new job and take an OC spot. But wild night in Orlando.
Well, I was just going to say, you brought up the timing. I mean, what's wild is they've been talking about that offensive coordinator position and how they're out looking, and they're doing it. And it was like, we're going to get this thing wrapped up right, next week, basically, because as soon as we can get it done, then we can tell guys, this is your offensive coordinator. And frankly, they're going to obviously want to know that same answer from Kyle Whittingham. I think we'll probably know what the decision is going to be on Monday. I would think it's going to be there, because you have to start there and then go to the offensive coordinator, because if you want clarity from all these guys, the recruits are going to be asking questions, the guys in your locker room are going to be asking questions, and so there's going to be a lot, I think, on this Monday press conference from Kyle. It's going to be quite juicy.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what direction Utah football goes, but a good way to end the 2024 season with a win at UCF. We're taking a break. 1st and 12 here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone. Coming up next, Big 12 headlines, unpacking all the big storylines from Week 14, the final week in the regular season in Big 12 football, next here on 1st and 12 on the KSL Sports Zone and KSL News Radio.
The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. 1st and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Happy Sunday to you, and welcome on in. It's another edition of 1st and 12 right here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone. Alex Kirry and Mitch Harper. Well, it looks like this is going to be the final episode of the season this year. We thought maybe there'd be a BYU Big 12 championship game, but that's not to be had. But we are going to kick things off as we always do. Our program brought to you by Macy's. Get the freshest fruits and vegetables from your local favorite brands and all of the local farms as well. You expect it, and you know what Macy's delivers. It's Macy's. Happy shopping. Mitch, let's jump in here. Let's get to our Big 12 headlines.
12 headlines.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
The dozen storylines that shape this week of Big 12 football. Headline 1.
Iowa State and Arizona State, they're going to play in the Big 12 championship game. They both took care of business on Saturday, and they will meet next week in Arlington in AT&T Stadium, 10 a.m. Mountain Time on ABC. Should be a good football game, but Arizona State, they are playing outstanding ball. But that's your matchup in the Big 12 championship game. Headline number 2, BYU earns their 10th win of the season, but looks unimpressive in a 30-18 victory over Houston.
Yeah, and we'll keep that rolling here with a lot of these other headlines here. Part of the reason that I think a lot of folks see the disparity right now with what BYU, the way their offense is playing. Arizona State absolutely demolished Arizona in the Territorial Cup in Arizona, in Tucson, 49-7. Cam Scadaboo, basically solidifying that first team all Big 12. And just another dream moment for Kenny Dillingham and his guys. Sun Devils absolutely roll, and they get this thing going. And it was their first 10-win season since 2014. Can you imagine what ASU is going through? Just an absolute dream of a season for them. In a year that the bottom of the conference predictions at the beginning of the season have now ended up at the top of the standings in the Big 12, not just Arizona State, but, of course, BYU and so many other folks who are outperformed and then other people who underperformed this year.
Travis Hunter, he's always had expectations, and he continues to outperform those. Coach Prime, after the game, you'll hear from him coming up a little bit later this hour, but did he lock down the Heisman Trophy in that blowout victory over Oklahoma State, you think?
I'm not one of those guys that loves to hand it to somebody who, plays a ton of snaps. I get it, and is a really, really an amazing athlete. But you know what? I said it, I think, on our show on Friday. You haven't had a superstar quarterback across college football. Quarterbacks just get the automatic nod, and when you don't have a season like this year, there's no Joe Burrow, there's no Jaden Daniels. I just named 2 LSU quarterbacks who won the Heisman Trophy, but those guys put up insane numbers, and you couldn't not give it to them. And I think that in a year like this, where you have kind of down quarterback play across the country, Mitch, maybe you disagree. I think Travis Hunter's got it locked up for sure, and you know what? Good for them. They'll get their second Heisman Trophy winner at Colorado, and Prime brought a Heisman Trophy winner to Colorado if that ends up being the case with Travis Hunter winning that trophy.
Would be pretty impressive, that's for sure. Either him or Ashton Genty. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those guys. Utah ends a 7-game losing streak with a win at UCF. Now we wait for Kyle Whittingham's decision. We'll have more on that breakdown with the Utes coming up at the top of hour number 2. Baylor, Alex, what a turnaround for the Bears.
Massive.
6th straight win as they roll to a 45-17 victory over the nation's hottest team in Kansas. Sawyer Robertson was brilliant. He had 310 passing yards. These Baylor Bears, 8-4. They're in the season. One of the best teams, I think, at season's end in the Big 12 this year.
Yeah, 8 wins, and they retained Dave Aranda, and, kind of a forgotten storyline because they started off so slow, but yeah. How about Kansas? I'm not going to dog them, man. I know they lost 45-17 to end that
Great
season.
Great turnaround.
A phenomenal job by Lance Leipold, a guy that I don't usually love to give a ton of credit to, but, man, they turned it around. Kansas, I think that they've got bright days ahead of them. There's an expectation there now in Lawrence, and I think they're probably going to live up to it a little bit more in the future here. Taj Brooks shines on Senior Day, has 188 yards on the ground, by the way, and 3 touchdowns as West Virginia gets absolutely blasted by the Red Raiders. And speaking of 8-win teams, Joey McGuire's guys, they looked a little bit mid for a lot of this season, but, man, they could score points, Mitch. That was a really, really good offensive team.
How crazy was it, this stat? First 8-win regular season, that's not including a bowl, 8-win regular season for the Red Raiders since 2009. That was
wild.
Mike Leach. That's been a long time for Texas Tech to have 8 wins.
Yeah, that means your guy, Patrick Mahomes, didn't even do it back when he was holding the reins down there at Texas Tech. But I'll tell you, UCF, we thought was going to have an amazing season, and they haven't just melted down. They've hit DEFCON 1 because that whole place exploded after that loss last night. Utah, of course, gets that win down there, but you've got Gus Malzahn leaving. You've got all the players leaving. I do not know what's going to be left over from this UCF team. Terry Mohajir got a lot of homework to do in the offseason here.
Yeah, it's going to be a total reset, but I honestly think for UCF, it's going to be a good thing because Gus Malzahn ran that thing into the ground. I don't know the context of that video where he was waving off someone on the sideline during that broadcast, but that was not a good look. Whatever
Weird,
that was, it was very strange. It did not look like a head coach, a leader. So I think it's going to be a good thing that UCF moves on from him. And they once branded themselves the future of college football. They got to get back to that by getting a young up-and-comer in that head coach spot. Number 9, TCU holds off Cincinnati in a snowy game in Cincy, 20-13. Bearcats close out the season on a 5-game losing streak. Cincy ends up 5-7, and all the kind of good vibes that we thought maybe were, percolating at Cincinnati at 5-2. Well, it feels like they kind of went by the wayside as it reverted back to who we thought this program was with Scott Satterfield, a losing one. They go no bowl game for the second consecutive year, just a couple seasons after reaching the playoff at 3 years ago.
The Big 12 media poll at the beginning of the season only had 1 out of the top 5 teams that finished with a winning record this season. The bottom of the conference, by the way, Utah, Arizona, and, of course, Oklahoma State, a combined 4 wins among those 3 really storied programs. I say Arizona's not really a storied program, but we thought with all the talent that they had coming in,
sure.
If you had Utah at 2-7 in conference play and Oklahoma State at 0-9 to end the season, Mike Gundy, I know that he's not really on the hot seat, but at the same time, I don't know if his heart's in this thing, man. I mean, honestly, the bottom of this league is as head-scratching as of a performance this year as the ones that are at the top of the league. I don't know which is more wild. What Arizona State did, having a 10-2 season and turning things around, being the 16th team in the preseason poll, or Oklahoma State going 0-9 this year. Mitch, we are covering a bonkers conference, man.
It is absolutely insane, and it's a shame that this league is not getting the respect it deserves, I feel, in the college football playoff rankings. It feels like all these teams have been overlooked by the committee. In fact, this past rankings, many of the Big 12 teams were ranked below Tulane. And look, I'm not willing to knock a team just because they're in the group of 5, but you saw Tulane got beat by Memphis on Thanksgiving night. This Big 12, they produce good football teams. 5 teams in the top 25 last week. Put a little bit more respect on the Big 12. It'd be amazing if this league could produce 2 teams in the playoff, but at a minimum, I feel like the conference champion, whether it's ASU or Iowa State, should be ranked higher than Boise State because this conference, the gauntlet, it's a strong league, and you can't just take any night off, whereas in the Mountain West, Boise State could have some nights off and still win by about 10 points. You can't do it in the Big 12. You get tested every single week, and whoever emerges next week in Arlington, they deserve to be in that top 4 in the first-round playoff bids, and I hope that happens, but I fear it might not.
9 of the 16 teams in the conference, by the way, all going bowling in this offseason. So that's a positive one as well for Brett Yormark and his conference. We'll take a break here. We'll come back. We'll come back. We've got our Big 12 Sound Roundup next. You don't want to miss any of it. Coach Prime, Joey McGuire from Texas Tech. So many other things to jump in and talk about here. So let's get right to it. That's around the corner right here on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone and on KSL News Radio.
Big 12 Sound Roundup.
Check 1, 2.
The best bites, cheap shots, and excuses from Saturday's postgame news conferences.
If you weren't awake on this Sunday morning, that sound will get you going. It's the Sound Roundup. Big 12 Sound Roundup here on First and 12. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry, and it's brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store. Happy shopping. So much to get to in this week. Man, the characters, the personalities in the Big 12 make this league so much fun, and none bigger than Coach Prime, and he made it clear, Alex, that Travis Hunter, well, he locked up that Heisman.
I think Travis clinched the Heisman with his performance. I think he made a lot of people aware of how ignorant there was with the Thorpe. His performance today, what he had 3 touchdowns, 100 yards, and an interception, and 2 Passes broke it up. Should have had another pick. Hit him right in the darn chest. I'm not happy about that, but I'm happy with him.
Yeah. Coach Prime has his thoughts about his is really the Jim Thorpe Award. Is that the one that you're that worried about? And by the way, you didn't make a very good argument for it. It's for the best DB in the land, and you go, he got 3 touchdowns on offense. It's like, well, they're asking you about this. Look, I get it. It's fine. I think he's probably going to win the Heisman Trophy. Let's be happy with that. No one's really thinking about the Jim Thorpe Award. Then there's Joey McGuire, a guy who Coach Prime actually does know his name because, of course, of the ties that he had to recruiting his son out of high school. And here's what he said. Joey McGuire, by the way, the head coach of Texas Tech, here's what he said, ripping on the College Football Playoff Committee.
Man, I think the narrative of college football right now is really screwed up, and I'm gonna kind of talk about that. It comes down to a patch, I guess, that's on your jersey, because now stick with me. If Texas wins the SEC, that means a Big 12 team from last year won the SEC. If Oregon wins the Big 10, that means a Pac-12 team won the Big 10. And if Arizona State, not whoever's playing, but Arizona State's got a chance to play in the Big 12 championship, so that means a Pac-12 team won the Big 12. And then if SMU wins the ACC, that means an American team won the ACC. So I think it's absolutely embarrassing what this football committee and, we got to back up what we need to do on the field so they get pissed off at me. But it's absolutely embarrassing what they're doing to this conference. And if they look at it that way and they sit there and say, who's playing the best football, who's the most competitive conference, who week in and week out, what you see on tape, and the games that you got to play, I think the Big 12 should be in. The Big 12 champion should be in the Final Four, right? And then when teams are talking about multiple teams, depending on who plays in that game, they should have multiple teams. I think it's absolutely ridiculous what is happening at that level, at that committee, and just go back and think about that. I guess whenever you're a year away and you just change your patch on your jersey, that it actually means something, that you're in a different conference, and that conference is all powerful.
He's dead
Great
right,
stuff.
Mitch.
Well said,
yeah,
Joey McGuire. Thank you. Well said, Joey.
He's dead right, and on top of it, I think you might see some changes. And you know what's not going to happen? The SEC is not going to add a ninth conference game. And you know what? You should do exactly what Chris Kleiman, the head coach of Kansas State, said this week at his press conference. We got to go to these Big 12 meetings this year, and we got to have this discussion, because you cannot have this problem at the top of the Big 12. Part of it is that all these teams are good enough that they're beating each other. And so it's easy for the college football playoff to go, well, you're not good enough because you have these 2- and 3-loss teams. But the 2- and 3-loss teams in the SEC and the Big 10, of course, get the pass. All right, how about take a listen to who will likely be the coach of the year in the Big 12 Conference. At least he would have my vote. Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State University, and the insane year that they've had. Here was his final podium of their final regular season game.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's like we said, it's the bragging rights. I mean, I got sent probably 4 or 5 different text messages from buddies driving down here to watch the game, and in their car are ASU and U of A fans, right? Because that's how close this rivalry is. It's in your own backyard. And that's why it means so much, because it's playing somebody that you live every day next to. And you're either going to hear them say something about the game, or you get to say something about the game for a year straight. So absolutely incredible accomplishment by our guys to go from what we did last year. I can't remember the score, like 54-21, is that right? Close. To what we did this year is one of the most, it's remarkable, the turnaround that those guys and that leadership and that group has been able to do in 1 year. And it's a special group, and we should all cherish it.
That has to be the first time, Alex, I've heard from a head coach. I got a few texts from some buddies. That is 34-year-old Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah,
and that is him in his purest form. But good stuff there, and congrats to Arizona State, because it's well deserved. They are playing some excellent football right now, and they are on fire. They are playing outstanding. They dominated Arizona, and they got everything in front of them going into Arlington next week. We got to take a timeout, though. On the other side, we'll get to the Utah game breakdown, what happened in Orlando on Black Friday. This show brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store. Get the freshest fruits and vegetables from local farms and your local favorite brands. Macy's, happy shopping. More First and 12 next here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.